If you want your drums to sound unique and not like the standard splice loop that every other producer in your genre is using, then stick around because this video is exactly for you. I've discovered a super fast and effective workflow in Ableton Live that guarantees unique sounding drums in just a few clicks only using the stock tools. So in this video right here, I'm going to share with you what that technique is, why it is so powerful, and how you can simply copy it into your own workflow. Now, in case you don't know me, my name is Philipp from Pick Yourself. I produce, mix and master music full-time in my studio in Berlin. Right now, I'm in my remote location in Spain, and this channel just exists to help you make massive progress with your music, and I hope you enjoy it. So here's the core loop that we work with. Let me quickly play this for you. It's just kick, 2 different bass layers, and hi-hats. Now at this point, we could obviously just throw in some random top loop, or we could go in and program, for example, a clap on 2 and 4, but that is exactly what most people will do. And so our way to stand out as an artist, to develop a signature sound, we want to do something unique, and I will show you a super fun way that actually inspires a much more interesting song. So step 1 in the process is to create a new MIDI track with Simpler. And we'll call this top loop 1. And what we now need is we need to throw something in here. So what type of sample are we now using? We want something that is kind of complex, has a lot of different sounds in it, and is not just the super typical drum top loop. So let's pick this loop here. Now, what I want you to do here is to go into slice mode, and that basically detects all the transients, so every single hit, and slices up the audio in a specific way. And you can then go in and play different slices just with your keyboard, for example. But there's a cool trick that I will show you now. So you can first of all adjust the sensitivity to only include specific hits and not like the full material. You can also go in here and delete some of them just by double clicking on one slice, and that basically removes something off the grid. But yeah, overall, you want to have a few different sounding hits. That's the most important thing. And you can obviously just restrict the range. And now, the magic happens once you actually go into the MIDI section here and create a little MIDI loop. So the old way of working with this method would be to just draw in notes starting at C1, because C1 will trigger the very first sample here, and then basically work your way up and try out different slices and combinations of them, deleting some of them. So as you can see, it's just going through these according to the MIDI notes here. Now then, some people had the idea of using an arpeggiator in front of the Simpler, which then started to create really cool grooves, and that was quite nice. But in Ableton Live 12, we have an even more powerful function here, and that is the Euclidean mode. Let me explain Euclidean rhythms in the most straightforward way possible. They are mathematical patterns that distribute a certain number of beats as evenly as possible over a certain length. This concept was actually named after the ancient Greek mathematician Euclid, who came up with an algorithm that can evenly distribute a set of elements. So to put simply, let's imagine a drum loop with 16 bars, and you want to place 5 hits within this loop. The Euclidean algorithm will distribute these hits as evenly as possible across these 16 bars. Now, the beauty of Euclidean rhythms is that they can create patterns that are non-standard and often syncopated, which can bring a fresh, engaging feel to the music there. Commonly used in various genres, including techno, African music, and even classical music. So if you want to create your own Euclidean rhythm, you would first of all have to decide on the total number of steps or beats for your rhythm, and then decide how many hits you want within those steps. And you can also change this individually for every single instrument. And the Ableton Live tools allow you to do exactly that. Now, to get to this function, you have to go to the last tab here and select Euclidean here. Let me show this as an example, because that will make it much more obvious. So those 4 colors here represent 4 different notes that our Euclidean rhythm can play. These are the different voices. And as you can see, we have C1, C sharp, and so on. Those are the 4 notes that are currently dialed in. And if I just generate the pattern that we have right here, going to see like these are basically all notes playing at the same time. Now, the cool thing is that you can easily start generating rhythms by just pressing this little random knob, and it's going to give you variations of the Euclidean rhythm depending on what you've dialed in here. We can start to get a little bit more creative by playing with the different divisions. So let's say we want less density, so the notes should be distributed a bit more sparsely. So already we have kind of a custom group that is just playing back these samples in a specific fashion. Now, obviously you say that is probably still not unique enough. What can we do to enhance this? So the first thing I always recommend you do is to actually duplicate that loop or make it longer. So we extract the length here and make it 4 bars here, which generates something. And then you can play around with shifting the rotation of these so that these samples start to play at different times. And we'll also just decrease the density once more. So that is already sounding very nice, but it's just the beginning of the groove that we're going to develop. So at this point, the loop is still pretty bare bones sounding. We're going to infuse this with another layer of character right now by adding a different groove with different material and also different treatment. Before we get into this, if you're struggling with finishing songs, I have something for you. It's called the Finisher Framework. My 3 simple steps that will help you get to one finished song, great sounding song per month. You can get it at pickyourself.com/framework. The link is also in the description. All right, now we're going to drag in another instance of sampler, create a new track here. Once again, go to the slice mode and we will import a field recording. So the idea is to grab some recording that can be field Foley recordings. It could also be just a very, very strange and twisted percussion loop that you just have laying around. But the idea is to have material that has a lot of edge and character where all the different shots inside that material sound very different from each other. So this is a field recording of me hitting some random bowl somewhere in Sardinia in a cave. You see, it's a super long field recording and I can go in here and exactly tell the simpler what slices I want to play. So I can just go in here, double click, remove some of them if I don't want them to play. Because especially with field recordings, you sometimes have a lot of unwanted noises that can be crackles, that can be people chatting. And maybe that's something you want to include, but I definitely would be a bit more intentional about what I want to feature here. Now, the cool thing is that you don't necessarily have to do it this way by removing slices or adding them. You can actually do this in the MIDI editor as well, using the Euclidean mode once again. So let's first of all draw in a new shape. Go to something a bit weirder, like 12 steps. So every bar is going to be divided into 12 different steps. Bring the density down quite a bit and the division to 32. That's actually quite cool because now we have like a more nuanced way of throwing in hits here and there because we slice it up in really small ways. What I've just told you is that you can select these different slices by the different MIDI notes. But the cool thing is here in the Euclidean mode, you can actually use different notes here. You just go through these notes and basically go to something that sounds interesting. I'll just let this play now and we'll listen to this in solo, get an idea of what's actually happening. So as you can tell, this is just some random noise stuff in the beginning that is not giving us any value. This is why it's so helpful to have these different notes playing. We can actually just shift everything up a bit and see if we get to more useful material here. So I've now found those 4 different slices that actually make sense and sound quite interesting. Listen to this. So you can tell that they all have a very unique texture and it sounds like a loop that I can't get anywhere else, at least not in this form. Now let's listen to that in context. So you can tell that there is some imperfection in the groove, and that is kind of nice, but it's also a little bit too much. So let's try out some other patterns. Let's make it a bit more straightforward. And now we're going to do the same thing. We're making the loop a little bit longer to allow for more experimentation. And let's try out to generate this in a different way. That is super nice, but we can also play around with the shifting here. So this is a pattern that already adds more interest because it's changing and evolving over time. It has kind of a polymetric feel, which is not necessarily always the case, but it is something that definitely gives us this feeling of stuff is evolving in the background. Now, in case you're still, I don't know, watch this. Go to the echo, throw in a little bit of the 8th dotted echo in here. Ping pong. Bit of the phaser flanger. I will actually put this before the echo, put it in doubler mode. love about these types of loops is that they're super organic and woven into the music in a very natural way. Now, if you got some value out of this, consider liking the video, consider subscribing to the channel. It means a lot to me. It will also help you because the goddamn algorithm is going to suggest better videos to you. Now let's get back and show you one more layer here. Now the Euclidean mode is fantastic to get started and get this like basic groove going. But what if you want to go a level deeper and have it even more expressive? Once again, we throw in an instance of Simpler. So I've loaded in another sample. This is once again like a pre-made loop. This is not a field recording, but it still contains a few really nice layers. You can see these are already quite different shades of the same kind of sonic architecture. So if I want to go beyond the standard Euclidean patterns, I can just go in here and use some of these other modes. For example, the seed and the shape. Those were the ones that stuck most for me in terms of like rhythmic stuff. So in seed mode or in shape mode, you can basically, shape mode is just drawing something in. And the pitch range, you can basically start at C1 because that is where also these like field recording slices start. What we do is we once again make it a bit longer. Start to draw in these shapes, generate it, make it a bit denser. Now let's bring it up a bit. You can obviously go in and edit some of these notes out. If it's too stuffed, you can either decrease the density or you leave the density and just get some of these note outs, or you go here to the seed mode. So we'll generate something and basically decrease the density here, leave just a couple of these sparse notes, but it's okay to have a few voices playing at the same time. And we have to dial in what type of pitch range sounds nice. And this is once again a bit more of a random approach, but you can curate this overall. And I really dislike this comment that some people say about this way of working. They say something like a slot machine producer, whatever. I actually think it's always been this way, whether you're curating sample and you have these lucky accidents while sampling a vinyl record. That is just as random as doing something like this. So I would say put on your big boy pants and be fine with different ways of achieving great results. So just together with the kick drum. Let's make it a bit denser. Now, once again, you can have much more fun if you then use delays on top of that. Delays are always awesome. This time, let's use the grain delay. And feed that into a reverb. Now let's listen to this in context. Let me know in the comments if you got some inspiration out of this video, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, take care. Peace out.